Slid into his DMs, was trying to get him to send me some dick pics, but he wouldn't. So I came out.
Well, I was like.
He's a real prude. So I came all the way out to Long Island. Obviously, if you live in New York City or New Jersey and you're coming out to Long Island, it's the worst fucking idea, no matter what time of day it is. Traffic was absolutely horrible as usual. But we made it out here. Me and the Mute are here, and I'm here with Mike Stella. I've been watching this guy on social media for a couple months now. Slid into his DMs, was trying to get him to send me some dick pics, but he wouldn't. So I came out.
Well, I was like.
He's a real prude.
Can you send me some of those pics? I'm gonna send them to Kenny. She's like, no.
So he's like, here's a couple pictures of my feet. Why don't you come out to Long Island and we'll shoot some content. So I came out here. So I know the background. I want to let everybody else understand. So you're an athletic trainer.
Yep, athletic trainer, strength coach, yep.
Tell us the difference, because there's a lot of people who are confused about the difference between an athletic trainer, chiropractors, physical therapists. They kind of all bleed together.
Yeah.
My understanding is like a lot of people in the industry, health and wellness space, are always like, chiropractors, it's like a made up bullshit pseudoscience.
Right.
And then physical therapists tend to be treating, like anytime I go to a physical therapist and they lay me on a table and they put electric stim and leave me the fuck alone, or put heat pads on me.
Exactly.
It's pointless, right?
Right.
So athletic training, though, I think is what bleeds from the training world into kind of the physical therapy rehabilitation sector.
So I mean, athletic training, the profession itself started mostly because if you're in like professional sports, college sports, because if you have like a team sport, the injury exposure risk is so high that you need somebody on the ground with the team all the time. You can't outsource that.
And your job is to get them back to play.
Right.
Whereas I feel like chiropractors, physical therapy are like, hey, don't do anything. We're going to get you, we're going to help you out. You're going to get to this point and then don't do anything. Right. Whereas you're integrating what more people want nowadays. It's like, wait, don't tell me I can't lift. Don't tell me I can't do this. How do you get back to me?
Exactly right. So that's exactly the model here, which was taking that pro sports model, like what pro athletes and elite college athletes get, and giving that to everyone.
Yeah. Not that it fucking matters, but where'd you go to school?
I went to Marist College for my undergrad, and then I did my graduate school at George Washington University in D.C.
Okay.
So I worked for the Florida Gators for a couple of years in between there. So I was on the sideline for that 08 national championship game. Tim Tebow, that team, that whole.
Okay. Very cool.
So I was an intern at that time. So I was working in the SEC, like elite athletes. So my whole career, my background was working with elite athletes and getting them back to competition.
Where do you think you started to pick up most of your philosophy and skill set from? Was it working with athletes? Was it working with the demographic out here?
It's like a lot of it was inspired by working with elite athletes and seeing the complete integrated approach. So like, for example, at the University of Florida, they don't have like sports medicine, strength and conditioning, and nutrition. They call it sports health. It's all under one umbrella. So every department is serving to prevent, treat, rehabilitate, and get these athletes back on the field with as little downtime and collateral damage as possible.
And how much is how much communication is there with like you and the nutritionist, or you and?
I mean, like some schools and programs do it really, really well. Other schools, it's a little bit more compartmentalized, kind of like healthcare is.
That's what happened. Yeah. What happens with the healthcare system out here? It's like no one really has any communication, so nobody knows what's going on.
So part of what we do here that people don't see, so obviously we assess people, we assess movement, we come up with hands-on treatment plans that are integrated with their programming.
Yeah.
But I also have a network of doctors that I've built over the last 10 years that are like my go-tos, like the ones that are doing this at a higher level. They're not just trying to shoot you with drugs and get you on a surgical table. They really are in it for the right reasons. So partly I help navigate, and this is what most athletic trainers do, is like help navigate that complex medical system and get people to the right stage of the process, to the right person at the right time. So
sometimes I step out of my scope of practice, but only because I've dealt with it so much.
Sure.
Where I tell people, they come to me and they're like, I have this shoulder issue. My doctor wants me to get shoulder surgery. I have this knee issue, my hip issue. I'm like, listen to me. Before you do that, you should go see, and I wish there was somebody like you that I could recommend people to in the city, because that's what I just said to you. I was like, it's funny that you guys have such a thriving business out here
Yeah.
because everybody thinks, oh, you go to the city, you get the best. When I send people, and no, not just shitting on HSS.
Right.
Every time I've gone there, every doctor I went to go see, they're like, we'll fuse your neck, we'll fuse your spine, we'll give you
Right.
shoulder surgery. I'm like,
Exactly.
wait, why is that the first fucking thing? Obviously, I know why, because they, if I could buy
surgeons.
a boat off, cutting your shoulder open, I
Right.
would too.
I try
But-
to keep an optimistic view and just think of it like they're not bad people, but their toolbox is surgery and trauma.
Yes, exactly.
So that's what they're going to offer you.
Yes, and I say that.
Right.
So
And most people are looking for something different.
So I tell people my tool is strength training. So it's
Right.
like I want to get you moving. So I think you
Exactly.
guys are already doing a nice job here. So
Appreciate
take
that.
us through. So you got a treatment area
Yeah,
here.
this is like
You
our
got-
treatment area. So like the vision for this was like physical therapy meets a barber shop. Like I like the
Which I
open
love the look,
format,
yeah.
Where like when we're a little slow right now. We're cranking away. We got the 3 tables going. Everybody's having a good time. We're talking, but we're also using this time to educate our clients, like strategize with them, like give them that touch point where it's like, oh, we actually give a shit about you as a human being and helping you get to your goals.
Yeah.
So a lot of people like to crap on manual therapy that it doesn't quote unquote fix the
Yes.
problem, but we use it as a way to facilitate somebody to feel better, so they can move better, so that we can get them in here and load them.
I tell people all the time, everything's based on feel. Like if I could get you, even if you think it's bullshit,
100%.
if you're gonna make somebody feel better, even if it's placebo effect, it's like they're gonna start to move better. They're gonna start to think.
100%.
I think there's definitely a
That's
use
my
for
big
it.
gripe with like the evidence-based bros or
Yeah.
like manual therapy's bullshit because
Yes.
it doesn't fix the problem. I'm like, time out. Where do we do that in any other aspect of medicine?
Yeah.
It's like that you think that statin is permanently fixing your high cholesterol? Hell no.
Yeah.
It's managing it. So, and like, I always tell people too, it's like, oh, it's placebo. It's a placebo, so it's not real. I'm like, what's your definition of real? I just go back to like Morpheus in the Matrix. Like,
Well-
what's real then? Because it's just the way you
Yeah.
perceive something.
Exactly.
And if that perception is positive, then that to me, that's a fucking win. I'll
Yeah.
take that all day.
No, the mind is a whole other world as you tap into it.
100%.
But I think the nervous system too. I just did a podcast with Dr. Jason, the guy who created the Theragun.
Right, yeah.
And we were chatting about it. Percussion therapy, and he could obviously explain the science a little bit more than me, does calm the nervous system,
100%.
right?
It also excites the nervous system in a sense too.
Yeah.
So it depends on that person, right?
Yeah. No, I think definitely human touch for people is a very calming response.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's a nervous system issue where you're like, how do you get this person to start to relax a little bit?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You get that person with muscle tightness, guarding, they're vigilant, they're anticipating pain all the time. Touch is a great way to speak the language of their nervous system.
Exactly.
It's the
I
only
love that.
sense that we can't really live without. So.
What I love, because as a business owner, right, not just as a athletic trainer, whatever,
Right.
all the things you're doing, you have this vision. I walked in here and I'm like, all right, this guy gets it, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to have some sort of branding. Like I love
Right.
the shirts, the way the room's set up. Like there's an aesthetic here. So
Well, like the purpose behind it too was I wanted to strip like people have expectations and like preconceived notions of what physical therapy is. And like when they go to a doctor, it's like any PT clinic or doctor's office, they all look the same. It's fucking beige walls,
Yeah.
like a picture of a
Looks
sailboat that says
miserable.
motivation.
Yes.
And it's like miserable,
Yes.
right? So I wanted, we only get one first impression.
Yep.
So when people walk in here, I want them to go, oh shit, this is different.
These guys
now
give a
I've
shit, yeah.
completely reframed their frame of reference for
Yep.
what to expect.
Well,
And
when
I get
you-
a chance to lay it down.
when
Yeah.
you walk in, like a good example of like a similar situation, my dentist's office, he's got this beautiful lounge area and like the rooms like just feel a little bit different than your
Right.
regular. I hate going to a dentist where I get flashbacks as being a kid. And you walk into the dentist's office and you're like, this feels like shit.
Yeah.
I want to leave. But this feels good. I like the setup.
I really appreciate
Yeah.
it. It means a lot. Coming from you, it means a lot. For sure.
What do you feel about the tape?
So I used to teach rock tape for years.
Yeah.
Again, it's a
Were
it's
you
a
ever in
slow
the
drip of
CrossFit world?
touch. A little bit.
Yeah.
I did my own CrossFit experiment, kind of like when it first started getting popular, and gave myself rhabdo, and then I kind of stepped away from it. After that.
Good. At least we know you push hard.
Right.
Yeah.
So So I got in with rock tape around 2017, 2018, and at that time they were really trying to break into like the athletic training community and like sports medicine. So
didn't they sell for like $10 million or something?
No, it was a lot more than that.
Really?
I think it was closer to 50.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember when it happened, I was actually out to CrossFit Games, and they were like, they just sold rock tape. I was like, no way.
Yeah.
All right. And look, you got the Legion, what is that, creatine over there?
Yeah, I got Legion. So I just signed a deal with Legion. So, they're like our supplement sponsor now.
That's awesome.
They sponsor my podcast.
Good.
It's really
I think it's a great product.
It's a great product for sure.
I love this little setup. So this
was like this, so I can't even really take credit.
Oh, really?
So when I took this space over, it was a filthy salon. And so like my whole thing when I was looking to build a facility, like I was telling you, I started with a table and just me, then I subleased a little room in a gym, then I subleased a room in a little bit of a bigger gym, and each step of the process I was trying to build systems, build my staff, build the business before I went and took the big financial leap into a facility.
For sure.
So when I was looking for my own four walls and to expand into the strength and conditioning stuff, I wanted to find a space that was as close to what I wanted it to be as possible.
When hiring these guys, right, you want them to kind of be creative on their own, and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of do their own thing, but the birth of a lot of what they believe in comes from you, right?
So I tell these guys, I provide a framework, but they have their own clinical autonomy to do what they think is best.
I agree.
So, and as we've grown, my role has kind of been stepping more into like that mentorship role where I'm teaching them and, we have our own education kind of system in-house.
Well, I like the fact that, and this is what I do, I give them autonomy to like kind of build out their own thing, but just give them some sort of framework or skeleton as to like, okay, here's what I want you to do. This is what it should look like, but make it your own, because then they start to give a shit more. If you tell them exactly, here, treat everybody in the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you're like fucking,
I didn't want McDonald's.
like a helicopter.
I wanted something where it was like, and to be fair, like what we're doing now isn't really 100% me anymore, because each one of these guys has
their own
put
business.
their imprint on it and helped me evolve it. So it's like an amalgamation of a lot of different ideas and concepts.
And that's how you get a business to grow. And this is what I tell people all the time. I go, you can't, be that, that helicopter pilot over everybody and make sure they're doing it. And you want it to start to breathe. That's how you build a business. If you get your staff to start pushing and building their own brand, it's only going to build your brand.
Exactly right.
Because they work here. For these guys to go and do the same thing for themselves, it will cost a fucking fortune.
Yes,
and I don't think everybody's meant to be a business.
I believe the rising tide raises the ships.
Exactly. I agree.
So
agree.
I try to give them a framework. Chris is my GM. He was one of my athletes, played professional baseball for a bunch of years, and now he helps me run the back end. Matt's one of my strength and conditioning coaches. So
everybody's jacked.
Programming and so he wrote us a workout for today. So we'll see how well I do. Matt generally has no mercy for me. It's his opportunity to.
And you got a whole content room in the back.
Come on in. This is my office. I'll show you around. So this is just my office. This used to be a storage room. It's nothing huge, but
this is all you need.
My consulting. I do my little podcast in here, and this room I haven't really done much with yet, just because when we were building the facility, it was more about like getting that ready. So this winter, this is going to get the overhaul too.
Awesome. But you got to. I mean, it's not. You didn't cheap out on this. You got cameras and.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a tech geek too, so. I said, people are like, what are you trading stocks in here? I'm like, no. I'm just like, I have 15 videos going at the same time.
I'm an idiot when it comes to that shit. That's why I have guys like him.
This is what we call a recovery lab. So part of what we try to do is just give people the tools and the education to understand how these tools fit into a training paradigm. So we have cold plunge, infrared sauna with the red light therapy array on top. So we, again, depending on what they're trying to accomplish, we'll kind of customize like a recovery routine for them as well. I've been a big fan of Normatec, so the intermittent compression units for years. And then a lot of this is just integrated into our programming.
I like that plunge you got there.
Yeah, it's a polar monkey plunge. Very basic, nothing crazy. But, it's got the chiller, the internal filtration system.
Question for you. Do you leave it on all the time?
No.
I was going to say.
No, I run it every day for about an hour, so it filters and chills the water down. And then it just depends on when people are using it and how often they're using it. And then we just treat it with chemicals, so it's change the water once a week. It's pretty easy, honestly. It's not that bad.
No, because I know a lot of people who are, I like this setup too.
Yeah.
Was this like this or you did this?
Like this.
Really?
This is where they used to have like hair sinks for washing.
Yeah.
So the plumbing was already back here.
And even the floor too.
This flooring was like this.
Dude, you got fucked. I mean,
Right.
good
so when
vision.
I took the space over,
Yeah.
they had all the salon equipment in here. And they were like, I guess the way they had their leases, it was when they went out of business, the landlord legally owned all their equipment.
So did
they
he
put
keep
that-
it or did you dump it all?
So no, he was like, oh, we'll get rid of it for you. I was like, just leave it. And I sold it all on Facebook for like
Really?
15 grand.
No
And
shit.
I put that into the build, yeah.
Good
But
for you.
Me and Chris built this whole place ourselves. We did all the flooring, the lighting, the electric, all of it.
Dude, that's a
You know?
great way to save money. I have a bunch of guys at my gym. I don't even want to see what the fucking bill's going to be right now.
You're gonna hate me when I tell you this, but so I found Rogue's manufacturer in China, and I sourced those custom dumbbells from China, and I paid $800. I paid more
For the whole
shipping.
rack.
For
Get
the
out.
whole set of custom dumbbells with my logos on them.
Okay. Well, you're going to have to share that with me.
So,
wait.
like I
so
said, I'm a savage. I was like up all night.
Yeah.
Like I'd be like back and forth with all
you're
these
like a fucking tech geek and everything. You got it all in.
I know.
So,
that's what my ADHD gets me, I guess.
so I have a very similar setup.
Right.
Obviously, we share a vision.
Yeah.
I just got the jammer arms. So my gym in Jersey that I just built is 4 stations just like this.
Okay, cool.
4 jammer arms on each one. I have the lap pull down. So Rogue just started making one too. So Rogue has it. I bought the rep ones because they came out. It came out a little
sooner?
bit. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got the lap pull down, a low row, jammer arms, 4 setups like that, multi grip bars for the pull ups, 4 Kaisers actually facing each one,
Oh, okay, I love that.
and then the turf, the strip of turf.
Yeah,
Tell me why you chose all this stuff.
sure.
Because I know why I did it, and great minds think alike, clearly. So,
Okay. So like when we got this space, my big thing too is like, I mean, it's New York. You know,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
goes in New Jersey too.
Yep.
Commercial real estate's like
so
ridiculously
expensive. Way more expensive. When
So-
people are like, oh, I got a space in Oklahoma. They got 12,000,
Yeah, they
20,000
traded like
square
6
feet.
raspberries and a fucking carton of eggs for it. Right, I know. So this place was empty for like 2 years, which gave me a lot of negotiating power. So I negotiated with them. I got the lease. They left the stuff. I sold it. So my vision for it was, you know, a lot of what our clientele is like high school, college athletes. That's like our core fitness business.
Okay.
And that, obviously I wanted to expand that into general population as well. So I wanted as much multi-function, multi-use stuff as possible. We're actually going to remove this room this winter to make the gym a little bigger.
What's
right
in
now.
here?
It's just a private treatment room.
Okay.
And my heavy bag sits in here, which
Yeah.
hangs on that rack. So the racks, these racks were made custom for me by Dean Shantz, who owns Black Widow Training Gear. If you don't know Dean, he is like,
Black Widow, no, I
dude,
don't.
he's out on Long Island. He's a local guy. I think
Yes.
he's a military veteran.
I've heard
But
of him, yeah.
He builds all this stuff. So I basically was like, here's what I want to do.
So I saw Rogue on something though.
Yeah, some of this stuff is like other feature, you know, like other
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah,
But
these are cool.
right. The
I
attachment
love
pieces,
these. No, these
all
bolts.
The magnetic,
yeah, the
pins,
magnetic
yep.
pins.
But he CNC cut all these logos in there for me.
No
so he
shit.
put all these little Easter eggs on it with the logos. He built me the sign for it. He
I-
built the deadlift platforms,
Yes.
right? So all of the metal work he did for me, he came in, he installed it.
Okay.
Again, I basically was like, here's what my vision for it, here's what my budget is. Boom.
Done.
And he came in and built
Yeah,
it all
set me
out.
up with him and then
will,
the
100%.
dumbbell guy.
Absolutely.
Because I want to get signs like that, like to
Yeah.
do metal work. I actually, so another thing, I got to get you a fucking TR. Oh, this is TRX.
That is TRX, yeah. It's an
I
old
never-
one. That's an
old
one.
one.
I had that one for like 8 years.
My gift to the gym is I'm gonna get you some new TRX shit.
Sick. I would
So I
love
work
that.
with
We were
Jack. So
actually gonna get more. Yeah.
Jack's the man. So Jack
Sick.
is the new owner of TRX.
Okay.
Really cool guy. Have you ever used a Y bell yet?
But what's that?
A Y bell. So it's basically like a
bell.
dumbbell. You stick your hand
Oh,
in.
I did see that.
They're
Who showed me
sick.
that? Mark Bell. showed
Yeah,
it to me.
they're
Yeah.
sick. So Y bells are awesome. The new TRXs, obviously,
that'd be dope.
yeah. I could get you
Oh.
some gear from them. And then I have these.
The anchors.
The
yeah.
anchors are awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super-
Those guys are from Boston or something.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
I met them at a trade show. So my old space was really just 900 square feet. I had a few tables in there, and I had like a little basically like a home gym center.
Yeah.
So I had my anchors on the wall. That was my cable system. So obviously they came over with me. The machines that I use, you know, because we also do rehab.
I have the
needed a
exact-
couple
this is a Bells of
specialties.
Steel.
Bells of Steel.
I have this exact
So
same
again,
one.
multi-use, right? GHD, reverse
Yeah.
hyper, the belt squat. This is a Titan piece. This is a
This-
leg press / hack
Yes.
squat.
So very hard to find one that like kind of
With the
it's
footprint
mold. Yeah.
small, right.
Smaller footprint. Because I love the Panada one. Panada
haven't
makes
used
one.
it.
Panada makes one. There's a couple different brands that make the multi.
Right.
But actually, Bells of Steel makes one as well.
Oh, they do? I didn't
But
know.
it's, yeah, but you know, it's kind of like tighter. Yeah. It's not as...
you know what I tell people is like, it's not the best leg press or the best hack squat, but it's
but
good
you
at
have
both.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're sacrificing a little bit of like the specificity, you know, for the fact that you can do both
And
things.
you
Not
could
do,
load
like,
this up
ACL
pretty hidden?
rehabs. Yeah, because you have the pins here and here. So this has a 1,000-pound limit.
Okay.
You know, so again, for us and like the athlete, you know, when I'm getting a post-op ACL, I needed some specialty machines.
Yes, I think
right?
this is the one piece I'm missing in both my gyms that
Right.
I want to get, but most of them are so big.
Yeah, they're big.
You know?
I was actually impressed with how small the footprint.
The floor
for a
print
leg
is what,
press.
like
Yes.
6, 7 feet?
It's 6 feet deep,
Yeah.
but maybe
4
keeping
feet
these,
wide,
like, 4
5 feet wide.
So it's really not that bad.
Yeah,
it's
it's
really
great.
not that bad.
Yeah, obviously, I
this
swear
is-
by this thing.
Yeah, this thing's awesome.
That's awesome.
Tighten belt squat again. This is for like we get athletes like low back issues,
Mm-hmm.
or even like we work with a lot of baseball players, UFC like MMA guys. So we have upper extremity injuries. I like to be aggressive. It's like, oh, you got a shoulder surgery? Well, you got 2 legs and another arm.
Yeah.
So let's train
100%.
you know, as heavy as we can to preserve your capacity. So a belt squat just lets us do that.
A lot of my clients are always like, well, I can't do that.
Right.
And they think I'm trying to like hurt them. I'm like, listen to me. If your arms don't work, you could use your legs. And this you don't need anything for.
And what
Belt
people
squat
don't
is absolutely
realize-
one of my best favorite tools.
What people don't realize is how much training helps your healing.
Recovery.
So like,
for
even
sure.
if you're recovering from a shoulder surgery, just getting your heart rate up and your tissue temperature up is an absolute home run. Most people are like, let me bury this in ice and not do anything. It's like you're literally slamming the brakes on your healing.
One of the ways I try to explain it to people, I'm like, do you know what PRP is, right?
Right.
And when they were talking about, what's his name, Lance Armstrong, like blood doping and stuff,
Right.
I go, what you're doing is you're forcing oxygen and
and
blood flow
nutrients,
through it. I go, you know what the only way to naturally do that is? Fucking move.
Right.
So if you're moving and working that area, it's gonna happen a lot faster.
Right.
If you leave it like this, it becomes stagnant. It's like a glass of water. If you leave it in front of the window for long enough, it's just gonna start growing moss and shit on it.
Yeah, that's 100%.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like there's so much time and opportunity, especially in the early phases, that people don't realize. 90% of your healing process takes place in the first month.
Exactly. And then and now I'm not. I've been injured enough. I've worked with enough people where I'm like, mine's more bro science. Yours is probably a little bit more classically trained.
Science mixed in there too.
Yeah, but yeah, it's true though, and it's like watching guys like Mark Bell and a lot of these guys rehabilitate themselves. I'm like, wait, if he could do Ido Portal, you watch a lot of these guys, and I'm like, wait, this guy's pushing the envelope. Why am I going to pay attention to it? You know, one of the things I asked my doctor years ago when I was having back pain, I go, with all due respect, I go, have you ever worked out before? Because all he wanted to talk about was fusing my spine. I'm like, dude, fuck that. And I was like, do you understand the healing power of movement? And I was like, you never, and skinny little old man, I go, you've never worked out a day in your life. So you don't, we're not even on the same page right now.
Right.
Clubs,
Yep.
maces,
Clubs,
I love them.
maces. Yeah, just
Love
like little
them.
unconventional stuff.
Tell me why you like those. Because
Because
there's a
it's,
lot of people who shit on them.
Right.
Like I like doing it. One, I find it fun. Two, I definitely get a good, like I use it as a warm up. I use it as in a workout. But what do you typically use them for?
So I use the clubs a lot actually for rehab, like like even like Y raises, because even I'll show you. So like
Uneven.
yeah, it's just so a lot of people conflate strength training with stability training. And so what I mean by that is like they try to use a strength solution to a stability problem. Right? So for example, if I'm doing like a Y raise, I'm doing a Y raise on my bench. Right? Yeah, I'm getting that middle and lower trap, but now I'm also getting like an anti-internal rotation. So I'm working my cuff harder to stabilize the glenohumeral joint while I'm working like my mid back. So, when I program for people, I'm looking for ROI. I'm like, can I get you the best bang for the buck with the least amount of exercise?
Yeah.
Like the least amount of individual exercises on your program.
For sure.
So I like the clubs and the maces. They're a little unconventional. They're a little offset. So they're just novel. Some people just like novelty too, to keep them excited.
Just to keep it exciting.
New, and it gives us that layer of fringe to mix in.
I think the number one thing that people forget to do is have fun in a gym.
Right.
Like when people come in, they're like, I don't know, I don't want to do this. I'm like, all right, what do you want to do?
Right.
Because you're going to push so much harder doing that. And we're going to get some result, and I'd rather do it with something you want to do than you kind of drag ass through the session.
I think
for sure.
Really good coaches are good at taking what people need and taking what they want and finding a way to meld them together.
Well, I think there's people like you and,
Right.
you know, like you said before, Mark Bell, and no one set out to, you didn't set out to be this guy. Right. You were like, I'm so embedded in this world, and this is what I do every day, and this is what came of it.
Right.
You know, everybody's like, oh, you have a gym and you have this event. I go, but this is the world I live in, where I'm like, oh, there's a problem here. I'm just going to fix it the way I would fix it,
Right.
and then you become who you become.
Yeah, it's so
you
cool.
know?
It's really, really cool. I joke all the time, like I became the guy that I needed 25 years ago.
Yeah.
When I was an injured athlete and struggling with my identity and my ability to get back on the field.
Exactly. I love that.
So these are the custom dumbbells.
They look great.
Yeah.
I like these.
They're
So you
really
could do them in hex too?
You can do them hex too, yeah. Yeah, you can do
Yeah,
whatever
these
you
are
want.
nice. I think, is this like a wider grip or no? I like that.
This is standard.
I like the
pro style.
knurling on it.
Yeah, they're basically rogue dumbbells.
Yeah.
They're just pro style.
Yeah.
And
So what would have been on Rogue?
a basic set of hex
Up to
dumbbells with the
100?
racks is 10 grand for 200.
Oh, fuck
I
that.
think shipped, I paid 1,600.
Damn, that's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. So what I did was I was like, okay, here's my budget. And again, I think a lot of times, you know, people go out and get the loan or they get an investment from somebody else and they go spending all the money and then they go, okay, now we got to find some clients. It's like, good luck with that.
Well-
Right? So we kind of built it a little bit as we went. We had the vision first. We built the systems first. And then I was like, I'm going to spend my money on the things that I want to make sure that are a little more technically advanced, like the Kaiser.
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
the pieces of equipment that you might, if they break
That you
down, you
can't
need service
have
for,
somebody
but it's a
fabricate.
dumbbell.
Yeah, yeah. No, but like, dude, honestly, knock on wood, I have a 5-year-old Kaiser in my gym.
Yeah.
I haven't had a fucking issue.
Dude, they're great.
They're
and their
awesome.
customer service
Yeah.
is great.
And I want to get
So
more of their
clean.
shit.
Oh, so do I.
I would love.
So
I
we're
would have
ripping
all.
that room out to make the gym a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
We put in like a double, cable, like a true cable system, high-low cables.
Yeah.
Because the one downside of the Kaiser is, your upper level resistance is a little bit more limited.
Yep.
But again,
Yeah, I agree.
because we're trained, baseball athletes, UFC athletes, I love it that we can do power work with it.
Yeah.
We can do testing with it. So it's a really great piece.
Yeah. So how many people do you ever run like small group stuff or? Is
Yeah,
it,
so most of all of our programming is for the most part semi-private.
Okay.
So, people train in a group, but everybody has their own program. That's
Okay.
the one thing that I wanted to do that's a little different is give people movement solutions, and in order to do that, it has to be kind of tailored to them. So, great example is my boy Mike over there. Mike had his low back fused, 3 times? How many times? 3 times.
So what's your thoughts on that?
What? Surgery? There's a time and a place for everything.
I mean, what, 3 times? I mean, after the second
Hard,
time.
man. It's hard because, it's kind of like you solve one problem and then create 2 more.
Yes.
Because then you get adjacent disc
That's
issues.
my point.
Right.
So
For
that's
some
why I try to
it's
talk people.
Right.
For some people, if you were in a car accident or there was some blunt trauma that fucked with the structure. Now, if it's a movement issue or a neurological issue, or in my case it was a chemical issue, right? Like
Okay.
I had severe back pain for like 2 years, 3 years. It was so bad. All I could wear was slip-on sneakers. Like
Oh, 'cause
I
your
walked.
feet, like the radicular pain was so
No,
bad?
I couldn't bend over
Oh,
to put them
gotcha.
on.
Oh,
and
got it, okay.
I would walk and train people like this, and I'd have to like lean on shit. I couldn't even sit down. My back was fucking killing me.
Right.
I got to a point where I'm like, dude, I'm never gonna be able to walk after this. It just kept getting worse and worse. He could tell you.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I went to go see a couple doctors, and something just kind of hit me. I was like, maybe I should get some blood work done. I hadn't gotten blood work done since I was 20.
Right.
I go and get blood work done. First doctor tells me, he's like, dude, your testosterone levels are so low, like under 200.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what? How's that possible? He's like, I want to get you a CAT scan. And I was like, I'm not fucking going to get a CAT scan.
No way.
Second doctor I go to, because I was like, let me see what somebody else says. Second doctor I go to, dude, you should get a CAT scan. And I'm like, what the fuck are these guys telling me to get a CAT scan? What's this have to do with my back? Finally, I go see this woman. I fell in love with her. She's amazing. She's still my doctor to this day. She sat with me. She went through the blood work. She's like, I think you might have a cyst on your brain.
Yeah.
So I finally go get the CAT scan.
Right.
And there's a cyst sitting on my pituitary gland.
I was going to say pituitary adenoma.
Yeah. And she's like,
Like a
this,
benign growth on the
Yep.
pituitary gland. Yeah.
and she's like, this is what's fucking you up.
Wow.
And I was like, no way. She's like, you're a perfect candidate for TRT. Now, for me, I've never used anything. I never want to use anything. And I was like, this is a big step for me, right? Now everybody thinks, using test is natty.
Sure.
I always looked at it as not, but whatever.
Natty plus.
Yeah. So it was a big step. So I waited even a couple more months. Finally, I started taking tests.
Right.
And I tell everybody, I'm like, dude, if you need it, take the shit.
Right.
It will. 3 months later, back feels great. 5 months later, I'm doing jujitsu. 6 months.
Isn't that
6
incredible?
months later, I'm doing fucking deadlifts with 485.
So let me ask you
again.
this: how many times do you go get your blood work done to your clients now?
I tell them all the time because I said, I would have gotten a back surgery, which would have had nothing to do. I go, think about it this way: if I came in this room and the lights are off,
right,
and I was like, hey, figure out what the problem with the lights are, and you start fucking spackling the walls.
No, you're right.
Right?
People are looking for
Go to-
hardware solutions to software problems.
I say that all the time.
Yeah.
And I go, most of the time, I would exhaust all those avenues before I started going and fucking with the structure of it. Because you start fucking with the structure, then you get a situation like that.
Once it's done.
Yeah, well, now it's like this is all fused together, so now everything above and below is
Exactly
all
right.
So
It's well documented. I mean, it's not my opinion. It's adjacent disc syndrome.
Yeah.
So Mike was laid up for years. He was north of 300 pounds. He was addicted to opiates.
Yeah.
His son, who's a IFBB pro bodybuilder, powerlifter, he's like, basically had an intervention with him. They were like, you got to turn this around or we're done with you.
Yeah.
And so about a year ago, he brought him here. He's like, Mike, I don't know where else to bring him, but like, can you help him? I'm like, well, we could certainly get him moving again and help him. And he's down 100 pounds.
So,
he's taking care of himself. He's back on the road with his band. He's like our poster child, and we're so proud of him. It's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I love hearing show because then you realize how the trajectory of like exercise can change your whole life.
Dude, totally.
Right?
It's a force multiplier.
There's so many times that people, like even with the election, after the election, I go, listen, if you're happy about it and you're excited about it, awesome.
Right.
If you're fucking depressed about it, awesome. Take a day or two, but get back to the shit that actually matters because you're gonna fall into this depression or, people are like out drinking, partying, doing all this shit. I'm like, all right, great. Celebrate for a day, get back to what you need to do.
Right.
Same thing with like if you're depressed, it's like, I have buddies of mine who haven't talked to me in 2 days, 3 days, because they're like upset and depressed. And I have clients who haven't come in 2, 3 days because they're like, I don't know what's going to happen. Well, anything that's going to happen, you have no control over.
Right.
So why don't you
we work on the stuff you can control, which is you.
Yeah.
Right.
Because before you get fat and now you're more depressed than you were before, it's like, I tell people all the time, I go, as someone who used to be fat, I go, you can't feel good. Any of these fucking people are pushing this fat, beautiful fucking agenda bullshit.
Right.
I tell all the time, I go, listen, I've been there. If I was never there and I was always in great shape, I wouldn't know what the hell I was talking about. But I've been there, and you're sad, you're depressed, you're upset. You move through your day so much less efficient than you would if you were like feeling good.
People underestimate how much just general health impacts their
Oh
mood,
my God.
their
Even making better
mindset.
decisions.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I had something better for breakfast this morning. Like if I eat something shitty at the beginning of my
That's
day,
your day.
it screws with the back of my head for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's funny that you mentioned that pituitary thing because when we were building this place, I would have been in a rut with my own fitness too, and not like low energy. I was like, it's just stress. I'm burnt out. I'm doing a lot. And then, went to my doctor, got blood work, and my blood calcium was super high. And I was like, that's weird. He was like, don't worry about it. And I'm like, well, what does it mean? He's like, some cancers cause that. I'm like, well, that's kind of worrying. Like, can we figure that out? He's like, let's just watch it, and I'll see you, and I'm like, all right. So I'm trying to be like, I'm not going to freak out. Just a little high calcium. Year goes by, we do my blood work again, still high. And now I'm pissed because I'm like, I just wasted a year of not figuring this out. And so I basically was like, are you going to fucking help me? Are you going to help me or am I wasting my time?
Physician?
My general physician, who was through my insurance, right? Yeah. So,
which is another bullshit thing.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. And
you could only use these 7
empathize.
fucking people. I'm like, why can't I go see the doctor I want?
Right.
Yeah.
So long story short, it turns out I had a parathyroid adenoma. So you have your thyroid, right? And then your parathyroid glands, you have 4 of them. They're very small, and all they do is regulate your blood calcium. But your blood calcium is important for your nervous system function. It's important for your healing. And it's a very tightly regulated mineral in your body. So high calcium can cause like arterial like basically your arteries can start to harden. You can have, you know, cardiovascular issues. You know, some of the things I was feeling, like fatigue, like just low energy. I thought I had low T, which is why I went to get the blood work.
Oh, shit.
So digging deeper, like not taking no for an answer. Finally figured out I had a benign growth on my parathyroid gland.
Did they do anything?
Yeah, they did a surgery.
Oh, shit.
So this was in July. So I had the parathyroid adenoma removed, and within 10 minutes, my blood calcium was normal. I'm under anesthesia. They do the blood work again, and it's within the normal range. So your parathyroid gland, when your calcium is low, it pulls calcium out of your bones into your blood. So the other bad downside is you can start to develop low bone density.
Bone density, yeah.
So I'm like, oh my God. So I didn't think I was feeling bad until after the surgery was done, and then I started training again. And we did a video, and he was like, dude, you look great. And I'm like, I feel fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I'm like, I cannot even believe the difference in a month.
I felt the same way.
You know?
When I started, like, I'd say like 2 months in, I was like, I feel like I could put my fucking head through it. Like, I felt so good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's so great.
I was like, because my test levels are so low. I was like, I don't even know what it feels like to be a guy anymore.
Right.
Yeah?
So my test was kind of like, you know, it's like 500, so it's kind of in the normal range. But again, even blood calcium can affect all your other hormones. So it's really interesting. So I'm in my own personal journey of like ironing all this stuff out and getting my own health.
Well, we're at that age now too. I'd say in the last year, you know, I just turned 41, and in the last year, I was at a restaurant one night. I'm with a buddy of mine, and I'm looking at the menu, and I'm like, fucking holding the candle up, turning my phone on. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Couldn't see it.
And I go see my doctor. She's like, yeah, 41, 42 is about when your eyesight starts to fluctuate again and get worse. And I'm like, oh, motherfucker. Now I'm looking at my hair in the mirror. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Well, that's why I wear the hat, man. Those days are long behind.
Well, for everybody out there who's approaching 40, there's nothing to look forward to.
Yeah. You know what's good about it?
You got the grays in the beard.
You know what is good about it, though?
What?
Nothing.
All right, you want to do a little session? Or
yeah, let's do it.
I actually, one of the things I want to ask you about. So,
I don't think these guys are probably pissed at the lighting behind us like that. But.
I have, it's back in April, right? I do Jujitsu, and I was,
That's awesome.
I had a guy on my legs, and I like pushed him off, and I like pulled my leg out really quick, and I heard my knee pop.
Okay.
Over the course of the next couple of months, it was just getting worse. I couldn't even bend my knee.
Interesting.
Right? So it was getting worse and worse and worse. Everybody's like, it's your meniscus, you tore your meniscus. And I'm like, I didn't fucking tear my, I know I didn't tear. Yesterday, I was squatting 285 for fucking sets of 10.
Right.
You know, I felt great. I could squat down. It's when I have somebody, like if I'm in guard and somebody's pushing, if their weight's sitting on my knee, it'll now still, it's almost like it catches, and I like can't even stand up on it.
Yeah.
I figured out how to fix it, but in the moment. So if I'm here and I feel it and I can't stand up, I have to get on my side and externally rotate my leg. So I think it's coming from my hip. Now this is a big part of why I want to come see it, because I think this is, I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Your skill level is obviously more than mine.
You haven't had a scan though either.
I haven't had a scan, but I don't think it's my knee, because it's like it catches here, I think.
Right.
But what relieves it is my hip. So it's like if I'm here and I externally rotate my leg and I'm like this, automatically it uncatches. Yeah. So I don't now. So every guy in my jiu-jitsu gym is like, dude, go in. They cut the meniscus or whatever catching on it. I'm like, I just don't believe that's the only way to fix this thing.
So,
because I got it to a point where it's not as painful as it was.
So, to be honest with you, it probably is your meniscus. It's a meniscus tear.
Okay.
But meniscus tears, there's two big factors: size, location.
Yeah.
Because you can have a big tear in a good location, you're good.
Yeah.
You could have a small tear in a shitty spot that can create some problems. The other part is like we call them red zones and white zones. A white zone meaning it doesn't have any blood supply, so they don't particularly heal well.
Yeah.
So, you know, and again, even just what you're doing though when you're like moving your hip around is you're rotating your femur. So you're changing the femur position on the tibia, which might clear that meniscus tear. But if you're getting catching, the other thing that tells me meniscus is you felt a pop. It probably swelled up inside the knee, so it probably bled inside the joint capsule, so you're not going to see it visibly swollen.
Okay.
But when you start to flex that knee and close down that joint space, you're going to push that swelling out, and then you're going to get that pressure feeling, and it's going to be painful to try to push past that
Yeah, well,
swelling.
that's what it was for a long time. Like, I couldn't get it. I couldn't
Fully
bend.
flexed.
Yeah, and then I couldn't fully lock it out for a while.
Right.
Like, to lock my knee was very hard. But now it's gotten less and less.
Yeah,
So-
most people cope really well. It's usually the initial injury and like those first couple of weeks when you have.
Well, I
that
knew
fusion
something
inside
happened, for sure. I knew something happened.
It's
but
either that or maybe you know, an LCL sprain, and like in that situation where you'd be like externally rotating, forcing in that direction, is just super rare.
Yeah.
You know, your LCL is like the opposite of your MCL, so it's the lateral collateral ligament. It attaches to your fibular head. You're more likely to break the fibular head than tear that ligament. It's so strong.
I always, I mean, like we said before, it's always the last resort. I'm like, they cut my knee open. Why I was so anti the idea is that a lot of people told me if you get it cut, long distance running now becomes a detriment, right? Like some people are like, you start to feel it a little bit more.
Well, again, it's all relative, you know. It's hard to say too because all of that's going to depend on A, your prior level of fitness, B, what you're acclimatized to. So I got plenty of distance athletes, endurance athletes, marathoners with post-op meniscus that do fine.
Yeah.
You know, the meniscus is a little bit of a shock absorber, but it's not a shock absorber like the cartilage on the actual ends of the bones. It's more like a gasket. Because if you think about like your tibia and your femur, right, they're pretty flat surfaces.
Yep.
So if you think of like a gasket or like an O-ring on your hose, it just creates like basically a deepened socket.
Okay.
So again, you can get away, in a lot of cases, you can get away with no surgery, rehab the hell out of it. If you move well at your hips, you have good knee control, you can control that tibial rotation well, you can do fine. Like I'm missing 40% of my meniscus.
How?
So the reason I got into sports medicine, I was a high school, college lacrosse player, and I tore my ACL, PCL, MCL, meniscus.
Why do you think that's so common amongst people, you know, our age and younger?
For what?
Tear, like meniscus, MCL, ACLs.
I mean, again, it's like it's
Do
all
you
about
think
exposure.
do you
know?
think it's like nutrition, or do you think the game's picked up and the body can't handle?
Like why we see more of these injuries now than in the past? Part of it is, you know, right now, if you look at like even youth sports, today's youth athletes are the most underdeveloped and over-specialized generation of athletes we've ever seen.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is like, you get a 12-year-old baseball player, that's all they do is play baseball.
Yeah,
they don't
yeah.
play other sports. It's not like when we were younger.
Yeah, yeah.
And then everything is organized for them. So they have so much more volume and mileage on their bodies by the time they get to the pros.
Yeah.
Like the reason we see all these MLB injuries, those are the first generation of athletes that played baseball year-round. And that's why we see so many UCL injuries and all these overexposures. The other part is exactly what you're saying. It's the level of athleticism, the speed of these games has gotten so much faster that the collateral damage is, when injuries
So
happen,
much higher.
they're more catastrophic.
You think about a fighter, like somebody like Muhammad Ali was way before his time.
Oh, for sure.
But you think of the average boxer and fighter back then, it's like compared to a guy now?
Well, even if you look at the UFC, look at like the original UFC.
Yeah,
that we
they were just
remember.
brawlers.
Look at Chuck Liddell.
Yeah.
No offense, Chuck. Like, don't kill me. But every single guy, even the guys that you don't even know about in the UFC, they're all fucking savages.
Yeah,
they're the most elite athletes.
Guys who didn't even make it.
It's not like, oh, he's a good boxer, but his jiu-jitsu sucks. It's like they're all complete. These guys are savages in every discipline.
Yeah,
and they're
yeah.
25.
Yeah.
You know
they were
what I mean?
all
It's
black
crazy.
belts by they were like 17,
Right.
18 years old. Yeah.
Right. It's
it's
the law
impressive.
of escalation, you know, and so the bar
The game
keeps
is
pushing up and up and up, and that's why we see guys throwing 100 miles an hour, guys running 4.240s. It's like that was never a thing.
I train a guy who played D1 baseball.
Right.
And another guy who comes to my gym played baseball. He's a little bit older, never made it to college level, but he's a big baseball player. I train his son, who, as a freshman, didn't make his team.
Right.
And I started training him, and now he's started as a catcher for the last 3 years. But I'm doing shit with you that I'm very sure other kids aren't doing.
Right.
Right? But he's gotten faster, stronger. And the other day we were talking about pitchers, and he's like, the average college baseball player now, or like if you're watching the World Series, right? These guys are comfortably throwing 96, 100 miles an hour, which he was
That's
like,
the new normal.
Yeah, he's like, when I was in college, he goes, he was a starting pitcher for his college baseball team.
Right.
And he goes, dude, I would throw 84, 85.
Yeah.
He goes, these guys are throwing
I
that.
have kids that are 15, 16 that throw in the 90s.
Really?
Yep.
And is that because they're just playing so much? I mean,
Again, partly is that one particular kid is a genetic specimen. His
Yeah,
older
yeah.
brother's an MLB player, so he's got it in him.
okay.
But what we know about strength and conditioning now and athletic development and performance training has exponentially increased in the last 10 to 15 years versus the previous 50.
For sure.
So if you look at like the history of fitness,
Sports,
it all
yeah.
came out of Russian bodybuilding
Yeah.
back in the day. Anything that you learned when I
West
was a
Side
kid,
Barbell, all
right,
that shit,
you
yeah.
learned basically bodybuilding or powerlifting.
Yeah.
But that was the way you trained athletes too. And even weightlifting back in the day wasn't a huge part of athlete training, but now it's become the necessity. So you got kids now, like parents are now interested in, oh, my 12-year-old starting to look like we have groups of 12, 13-year-olds that come in here and train, but we're just trying to lay the foundation for them and help them be good athletes.
Think about this. When we were kids,
Right.
it was told to us, and I think only in the last 3 to 5 years that the stigma's been broken, that like it's going to shrink, stunt their growth, it's not good for them, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm opening this gym in Jersey, which is a very similar town to this.
Yeah.
Parents are hitting me up being like, I want you to train my 9-year-old, 8-year-old. And I'm like, all right.
Well,
I mean, listen, I
benefit,
agree.
yeah, that's awesome.
I think they should be doing something. Like the other day, I had one of my clients' kids in the gym. He's 9 years old. I had him doing heavy carries, push-ups, pull-ups. I'm like,
The basics.
yeah, every fucking kid should be doing that.
Absolutely.
You know, as they're growing, as their body's starting to grow, why wouldn't you take advantage of that growth spurt, right? Rather than when you're developed, think about it from the far end. If you're 85 years old, and my 67-year-old client was there, I go, do you realize how hard it is for her to build muscle right now?
Right.
She's completely depleted of anything that helps her grow. I go, and on top of that, the muscle tissue's already kind of frayed and
You got the mileage on it already.
yeah.
It's
So I
tough.
was like, why
it's
wouldn't
tougher as you get older, for
yeah.
sure.
So it's like even at 20, it's like I think it's easier to start to build muscle in high school than it is when you get to college. Yeah.
A lot of parents are like, why isn't my son getting bigger? It's like, puberty hasn't really hit yet. Like, let puberty happen.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
They're like,
for
should we
sure.
see a growth doctor? There's fucking growth doctors.
That's
giving
huge.
growth hormone to kids.
Huge.
I'm like,
yeah.
how about we just let puberty happen?
Yes.
Because
That's
that
happening.
is going to be probably the best athletic development supplement you can take. Is just a little bit of patience.
I have clients who their kids are like 3 and 5 years old, and they're like, I don't think they're going to be big enough. We should get them on growth. I'm like, no. Wait. This kid's still got time.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I think, partly too, like when I was a kid,
That wasn't
me and
an
my
option.
friends played these full field games of like bumper tag, right? So like every day at recess, and this is like 2nd, 3rd grade, full field sprints. Now we were just having fun and goofing off and doing our thing. But, as I got a little older and then I'm playing, football, lacrosse, all these sports, I'm always the fastest kid on the field. And it wasn't that I was trained, but I was. But like if you think of kids now, they don't do that. They don't go out and play unstructured and just go full field sprinting.
Yep.
They're playing Fortnite or, you know what I mean, Call
Yeah.
of Duty or whatever they're doing. So they need that structure now. Now exercise has to be this, hey, go see Kenny, go to the facility, you're going to work out for an hour.
Yeah.
And what I do with the young kids is try to play games with it,
Yes.
make it fun. It's little mini competitions, so they're getting that healthy dose of competition. They're getting some athletic exposures, and then we're weaving in some basic movement competency in
Simple.
there.
I have them, I'll be like, all right, everybody's got to jump up on the bar. Climb up there, figure out how to climb up there.
Problem solving.
Yep.
Yeah.
Figure out how to get up there, and when you get up there, now hang as long as possible.
And then that's the version of when
What
you
we
were
used to
kids,
do.
like, oh, I'm going to climb this tree just for shits and giggles, right?
Yeah.
Just to see how high I can go.
So do you think there's anything I could do for this?
Yeah,
or like-
absolutely. Let's
yeah?
see. So pop over your fanny pack. And
Okay.
I want to see what your hip mobility looks like, and then
Okay.
we'll kind of go from there.
Let me get this guy.
I like the fanny pack, by the way. That's fucking
Dude, this company, Stumble & Co., sent me a bunch of bags,
cool.
like
coming
travel
back.
bags and stuff. But I love, like that's why they sent me a fanny pack, because they know I love fanny packs. I wear them all the time. It's like a man purse.
You want to put this on? Pardon?
Hold on. Oh, shit. Woo, that looks sick. Look at that.
Oh, that's dope, man. Gotta love that. Got some branding back?
Boom.
I just got to see something before anybody gets to see this.
Yeah. Tints will be all done Monday and Tuesday. As soon as they are ready, I'll come put them in. Call you in 20. All right.
Kick your shoes up. Let's lay on your back.
Okay.
I'm just gonna take a peek real quick. How long ago this
Working
happened?
with pro. April is when it happened. Yeah.
But it's gotten better recently. And
I
if
mean,
we're
in
on
the last
outside
like
here,
3 months, I've gotten
can you
it.
roll this up?
Yeah.
So what do you get, like here in the joint line?
That's where I felt it. Yeah.
So like, you know, some of these special tests are like, they don't necessarily, does that bother it? You feel
No.
it catching?
Mm-mm.
Alright, so that's your hip internal rotation. Like I'm just looking at like what the environment your knee, oh, there you go. All right, so when I externally rotate, you feel my thumb right here? So that's your femur. This is your tibial plateau. Watch when I go into more external rotation. See how that gaps the knee? So at a certain point, when you're cranking on this,
Yeah.
you're really gapping this knee. You're gapping the joint to make that extra tibial motion happen. So this could be a little LCL injury too. It's
Really?
possible. And again, that doesn't mean you got to rush and get a surgery. It could just be a sprain, like a partial
Okay.
tear.
But like squatting feels fine.
Right, because anytime you're working within the range that you have,
Yeah.
you're going to be fine. It's
Yeah.
going to be when you max your hip range of motion out,
Yep.
and you're still under pressure, and you got to find some room. You're going to sacrifice some structure. So you got to remember, this knee is mostly a stable joint. It pretty much moves in one direction.
Yeah.
There's a small rotational component here. That's small about tib rotation. That tib rotation is like a skyscraper. It's like bend but don't break.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? So that's why a lot of times, like, so you got like a chronic knee issue, I really will leverage hip mobility as a way
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
that. It's like, oh, when I stretch out the outside of my hip, the knee doesn't bother me as
Yep.
much. Okay, yeah, valid, because now you have a little bit of extra room here. Because if I
To
give you a little
rotate.
bit of compression like this,
Yep.
so I'm holding that joint solid, like that's your actual external rotation. Mm-hmm. So if I want
makes
to go
sense.
farther, that's a varus stress, we call that.
Yep.
So you're actually gapping that knee joint and
Okay.
exposing those tissues. So it's hard to say. I don't have MRI vision.
Yeah, yeah.
But if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I'd say probably a lateral meniscus tear, maybe even a partial LCL.
Really?
But again, that doesn't mean you need surgery. It just means, hey, maybe you prepare your body in a specific way.
But now
start
what if-
working on loaded tibial rotation to protect that.
If it happened in April,
Right.
by this point, or within the next 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
it'll probably heal itself, like any structural stuff, right? Wouldn't it
It'll
kind
scar
of
down.
scar down?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, again, our capacity for healing is highly dependent on the tissue that we're talking about.
Okay.
So like skin and bones, awesome at healing. Like you have a fracture, statistically speaking, you're probably never going to fracture that spot again because
Yep.
it heals so well. Same thing with your skin. Muscles are kind of in the middle. They have good blood supply, but contractile tissue is a little bit more specialized.
Yeah.
So they heal decently well. Ligaments and tendons, they have very little blood supply.
Really?
So they scar over more than they actually heal.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like replacing that tissue like for like. So will it be good? Yeah, it'll probably be fine. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And again, you also have to consider, it's like risk reward. Is the cost, like if you're the rehab discomfort, like dealing with that rehab process, is the juice worth the squeeze on the back end?
Yeah,
Are you
yeah.
gonna be that much more functional on the back end of that? Probably not.
Probably not.
So,
That's
so
what.
the
Yeah.
net positive is just not there. Like
Yeah.
if this was an ACL, and you were like, I want to compete in jiu-jitsu, and this is what I love, I'd be like, let's go get it reconstructed. And
Yeah.
do it, because the net effect on the long term is going to be better.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So like,
because-
I wouldn't really worry about it too
Yeah.
much
Like
more
this used to be so painful.
because you had swelling inside. the joint.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and that pressure has to go somewhere.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that'll also inhibit your quad when you have joint swelling. So you might get weakness, collateral weakness to the muscle.
I definitely do get some tightness to the quad, and like stretching my quad feels way better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Exactly. So that's kind of what I would. Again, it doesn't seem super swollen even now, though. So what I'll do is like close down that joint position.
Yep.
If I see like a lot of puffy swelling pushing out of there, then we know you got some joint line effusion.
Okay.
Okay. Just relax here. Does that bother you? Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, dude, I mean, it's pretty solid overall. But I would say You know, it's probably yeah. So this is a varus stress test. And it's really rare injury. You just don't see it that often, but you do see it in Jiu-Jitsu. That is
well,
wrestling.
because you're wrestling.
Yeah, because it's external pressure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
So as you work that hip more and more, you're taking the stress off the knee, right?
Okay.
And that's also part of the problem with, you go to a knee doctor, right? They're only looking at the knee.
And that I say that all the time. A lot of people go to these specialists. Like I went to go see the spine specialist, but I'm like, could this be my hips? Could this be my shoulder? Could it be my nervous system? Right? Like, why can't we explore other shit other than my spine?
It's just, it's the double-edged sword, right? Because the double-edged sword is this. It's like, if you need a spine surgery, you want a guy who's only done spine surgery.
Yeah, I get that.
But the problem when you go see him for a diagnosis is he's looking for a spine answer to your spine problem.
Well, here's my thing. Like, I don't know if you know what Neuralink is, right?
Like Elon Musk thing?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And you could retrain the brain, and we could shoot rockets up into space, and a fucking claw grabs it and puts it back down on the planet. I go, but we can't have humans talk amongst themselves like, hey, listen, I don't know if this is it. Maybe I'm going to call this other doctor who works in the same fucking building as me.
It's not scalable. And that's again, it's, you know, a lot of people bitch about healthcare in America. Oh, it should be, you know,
I don't think it should be free.
Politics,
I don't think it should be free.
You sure about that?
Yeah, I don't think
about that?
Somebody's got to get fucking paid.
You want the company that brought you the DMV and the U.S. Postal Service to run your healthcare? I'm pretty sure you don't want that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's...
No, I always say it's
the
like
innovation. The downside is it's hyper-competitive.
why wouldn't you pay him?
Right.
You should pay him.
So
and if you want the best of the best, it's like, well, it's gonna fucking cost money. Yeah.
So the cool thing about, and really the underscore of what we're trying to do at the Movement Underground, and really this is coming from my background as an athletic trainer, is like what people gripe about athletic trainers is that they're good at everything but a master of none. Mm-hmm. And the problem with our modern medical system is there are no good generalists anymore.
No.
Like your primary care physician is a pencil pusher, a pill pusher.
Yeah.
That's it. Like they don't really have the width to say, hey, let's try these things and help you manage generalized problems or point you in the right direction.
Well, there are so many doctors that I've spoken to that are like medical school. 80% of it
Pharmacology.
It's pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. And like how to work, use one to work to other.
If this, then that.
And I have, 2 or 3 girls who come to my gym who are all selling medications, and they make millions of dollars because this old man, he needs pills. All right, he needs that one. Well, now he needs this one too. Give him that one too. It's like, holy shit. Yep. That's why everybody's fucking drugged out of their brains.
Let's go RFK, baby.
Yeah. I mean, can't say that too loud.
I know. Edit that one out.
Good. Well, all right. That puts a little bit more understanding as to what's going on with there.
Yeah.
I was always under the impression, I'm like, I'll work it out like everything else. I had some issues with this side. I had a C3, C4 compression in my neck.
Okay.
Happened when I was in like high school.
Okay.
College happened again. I started doing like judo and shit. Got thrown a couple times. I always get some stiffness and some tightness here. This is actually great. When I box or I do anything, this side starts to weaken and drops down.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the neck. I don't know if it's my shoulder. I don't know if it's my pec. I don't know what it is. However, a couple of years back, 2011, 2012, I was doing CrossFit. I was doing fucking crazy workout, double unders, muscle ups, all this shit. Completely tore this pec off the bone. Woo! And I'm missing. Now, here's why I'm very against doctors. They go in, doctor tells me, he's like, at HSS, he's like, I'm gonna go in through the armpit so I don't have to leave a scar here. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about a scar on my shoulder. He's like, no, it's better if I go through your underarm. He went through my underarm. 3 weeks later, my arm's in a sling. I go back to the doctor and I go, why is my anterior delt missing? Mm-hmm. So still to this day, I have no anterior delt on this side.
Right.
So I go, and he's like, now this is
the
the worst.
Where the pec ties into there, is that what you're saying? Yeah. Oh yeah, look at that.
There's nothing there.
Some atrophy,
Yeah. So I said, but I had it before he did it, and I still have this fucking gap in my chest too. However, when I went to go see him and I told him this issue, he's like, that's not good. I'm like, wait, you're the doctor. You're not supposed to say that.
The last thing you should have said was that's not good.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that's weird. It's like, fuck. man.
So, you know, obviously, like, going down a malpractice fucking route and stuff. So I'm always, like, very hesitant about getting surgeries and stuff. However, I think this one tore because this one was just, like, so overworked. And I get this, like, numbness and stiffness.
You still get that?
Yeah,
Let me ask you this. You ever get coldness in that hand?
in both of them.
Both hands?
Yeah.
Oh. Bring it up. Go chin down to your chest. And just rocks straight ahead again. And this is the right side mostly.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you want to take your shirt off because I
Yeah.
can show the camera.
Yeah.
That flat thoracic spine. One of the things that you also have is what we call scap depression. They're not sad. They just sit a little low on your rib cage. So when I have you chin down your chest, that's your C7, T1, T2. Typically, that's where the upper border of your shoulder blade is, and yours is down here, right? So look from the front. When you look from the front, you see how level that collarbone is, right? So when you look at your shoulder blade, like on your back, if you're facing that way, so this would be your right shoulder, your shoulder blade sits a little low, and it sits in what we call downward rotation. So what that does is it brings your collarbone down lower, and the brachial plexus, which is the nerve and the blood supply that comes out of your chest wall and your neck and into your arm, runs under that collarbone above your first and second rib. So we call that thoracic outlet entrapment. So as you get pumped up, right, and your muscles start to fill with a little bit of volume, the tolerances, the space that you have through that tunnel start to get a little closed.
Yeah.
So when you get coldness in your hand, that's the vascular symptom because you're getting poor blood supply into your arm. And then that numbness and weakness is the nerve.
Why does that happen on a plane so much?
Plane?
Yeah, so like when I'm flying, I get in my hands.
So that could be pressure, you know what I mean? So there could be other things going on.
Yeah.
But from like a purely biomechanical perspective, if you look at, so what I would do in this situation is like open up that collarbone, that pec minor. I'll do it right now. And then we'll open up your scalenes and your neck flexors, and then we can kind of retest that.
Yeah, anytime, like, if I'm, like, boxing, I try to fight like this.
Yeah,
Because
little Philly shell kind of stuff.
I have no other choice, and everybody
Right.
thinks I'm trying to do it to be a hot shot. I just
Like,
can't.
I'm trying to do Sean Strickland.
Yeah, I was like, I just can't fucking hold this arm up. I have to, like, shake it out, right, do this, and then go back to it. It's like, but when you're fucking sparring somebody, you don't want to put your hand
Right, so part of that is, you know, maybe genetic, like just the way you're set up genetically. Part of it is the adaptations to the movements and sports that you've done throughout your life. So that flat thoracic spine, right, it's not a bad thing. And this is like where people conflate like poor posture with poor performance, and that's not really how that works.
But no, I've seen people with horrible posture, horrible physique.
Kill it.
Kill it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Right.
and you're like, why isn't this guy? It's just he's got shit genetics.
Let's see this. Let's go hands and knees on the table, like in quadruped position.
Okay.
Let me see how much spine flexion. So I want to see how much spine flexion. Right. So Kenny, you have pretty shallow thoracic flexion.
Yeah.
Right. So the problem isn't the flat thoracic spine; it's the inability to fully flex it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I've always had, even when I did CrossFit, I've always had an issue getting into that front rack position.
Right. So what you probably do is leverage a lot of thoracic extension to make that up.
Yeah.
When you have that really flat thoracic spine and you have a curved scapula, what'll happen is that downward rotation is a way that your nervous system can find some balance. So you start to have, like you might get some, I'm guessing like some stiffness through this like middle, like your rhomboid.
Well, that
Right.
area, I'm constantly
You get a
like,
stiff
now
neck a
it's-
lot when you turn your head to the right. You'd be like, oh, why can't I turn my head to the right? That's your levator scap.
Yeah.
Right, so a lot of times people get muscular stiffness, and that's your brain's proxy to stability. It's fake, stiffness is fake stability.
Yeah.
Right?
It's compensating for what's it
And
can.
again, that's the thing people don't remember. It's like, listen, your brain is designed to protect you.
Yep.
To keep you on this planet long enough so maybe you can pass on your genetic code. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
So it's going to choose safety over performance 100% of the time.
Well, it's a reprogramming issue, right? So I need to reprogram it to work.
Well, so one of the things that I would recommend for you is like, and this is kind of how we help our clients, is when I evaluate people, I'm just like, where are the opportunities?
Yep.
Where is your largest deficits? Because that's where we're going to start with like a corrective mobility, building it into your program.
Yeah.
So now your rehab and your training and your fitness are amalgamated,
Same thing.
right?
Yeah, same thing. So I always thought like doing some upper back, pull downs, you know.
So what you want to work on is reaching, landmine press,
Yeah.
scapular protraction and elevation.
Okay.
You know, so with clients too that maybe have scap depression, I'll choose my loading positions carefully, right? So it's like I'm not going to do deadlifts and farmer carries and you know, all this loading down here.
Yep.
So I might give you more racked positions, more waiter positions, goblet positions, so we can kind of work on some upward rotation, right? And like if that's a way that you're loading some other exercises, like does it make that big of a difference if you're in a rack versus a suitcase? Probably not. But it might be more beneficial to you because you're not over leveraging that scap.
Yeah.
And then slamming that collarbone on down a little further, right? So lay on your back so you're face up. I'm gonna hit your neck first.
Okay.
And we're gonna see what we can do here.
And it always feels like anytime I have somebody like pull on my neck or work on my neck,
You feel better?
that always, it just feels like somebody took an anchor off my neck.
Right. So again, there's part of it is could you have some nerve root compression stuff? Possible. Again,
What would, is it the chicken or the egg? With the
It
neck?
doesn't matter. Right. So part of the way that I do like manual therapy is I use the treatment as a diagnostic tool. So if I'm thinking, okay, maybe you got a thoracic outlet entrapment, I want to open up your pec minor, your subclavius, your scalenes, and you're like, fuck, Mike, that feels night and day better. Ding, 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 ding. It's like we're on the right track now. It's like we do this in medicine all the time, but nobody thinks that like a treatment, like in a manual sense, can have that same effect, and it can. So I'm just looking for the way I can change your brain's opinion. I don't care what like that one research article says about, you know what I mean?
It's like everybody's so different.
Right.
I was used to
100%.
peanut allergy thing. Like I love eating peanut butter. I know people would drop dead if they tasted it.
Right, exactly. Let me pull this out. Okay, you just relax that neck. So these are your scalenes, right?
Yep.
Your deep neck flexors. They'll attach to your first and second rib, which kind of make up the floor of your thoracic tunnel. So usually what I'll do is I'll start with this. Start releasing some of this. And release, I use that word kind of, you know, generously. It's a no-no now in like the physical therapy world. But
So, what the pressure on it? What is it exactly doing to the muscle tissue?
so
Is it allowing it to release? Is it?
So when surgeons use the word release, they mean cut, right? We're going to cut something off,
Yep.
right? When I use the word release, it's like I'm releasing you from the feeling of that tension. But when we do body work, I'm not physically changing the muscle. I'm changing your brain's opinion of that tissue, right? So if you look at like where our brain processes movement, there's a bunch of different areas of the brain that process movement, but one of the more significant ones is called our somatosensory cortex, right? So you feel this, right?
Yeah.
So this is a mechanical stimulus on your tissue, right? That these receptors in your skin are picking up, relaying that information in your brain's processing what it means and sending the feeling back to the tissue. So this feeling is an output from your brain, not an input.
Yeah.
Okay? The same part of your brain that governs sensation also governs motor control, right? So because if you think about it from like a movement planning, or we call it motor planning perspective, everything is a feedback loop. Your brain chooses what tissues it's going to quote unquote activate based on joint positions and tissue positions, right?
Makes sense,
So it's sensory information goes into the brain, motor information comes out. So if we can understand that first basic concept, here's what I'm doing now from a manual therapy perspective. I'm using mechanical pressure to change the brain's perception or sensation of this tissue. And indirectly, that's going to change the tone of the muscle. So when people say, oh, my muscle's tight, well, it's like, is it short tight or is it juicy tight? When I say juicy, I mean it's got current running through it. It's like protective tension or guarding, right? So most of the time, people are getting protective tension where their nervous system's not letting them go through, a particular range of motion to protect them, right? Ooh, yeah, right? So that hurts, right? It's tender. That's a sensory symptom. The tightness is the motor symptom. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I kind of take more of like a brain-based approach to this. This is like when before you said something, I was like, oh man, this guy's on it, right? Because you're asking those bigger questions. So a lot of people in the rehab world, and the reason why manual therapy started becoming kind of like all of a sudden manual therapy is like, oh, we shouldn't be doing
taboo.
that because we're taboo, right? All the evidence-based bros. It's because there was research that came out that said, oh, we're not physically changing tissue, therefore all of it's bullshit. It's like, well, time out. People got better. People feel better. People move better. So just because the mechanism that we thought we were doing isn't accurate doesn't mean there's no mechanism.
Well, I talk to guys all the time about
Just relax here. There you go. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
different exercises, right? Like there are plenty of guys who've gotten in incredible shape using certain exercises. For instance, I did a video on or one of the coaches in my gym did a video on upright rows, and I had 50 people.
Shouldn't do that.
Should never do an upright row. I go, all right. Clearly you've never done one. They're like, well, you should never do internal rotation. I go, all right. So what do you think a weightlifter should do? Somebody's doing snatches or cleans. I was like, they shouldn't do an upright row while doing the exercise.
Right.
I go, you've had people for the last 60 years, 70 years getting jacked off upright rows.
Right.
You know? Or, oh, you should never squat or deadlift. I'm like, all right, listen. For certain people, maybe it shouldn't be the first exercise they do.
Right.
But I would never want to limit a human's ability to move. Right. I would never say, don't do this ever again.
Exactly, and I think this is kind of where, like, listen, I'm all about evidence-based. I think we should anchor to good evidence.
Yeah.
But some people just can't get past the paper. So they read one thing, and it completely changes their ability to critically think outside that one thing, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, because this position is similar to a Hawkins-Kennedy impingement test, therefore you're impinging the shoulder. It's like, well, that's really just a provocative test to see if that position is bothersome.
Yeah.
It doesn't really tell us anything other than, oh, that position hurts this person.
Well, for instance, the New York City Marathon this week, you see some people run with the absolute worst form, and they're flying past people where you're like,
100%.
that person should be moving a lot faster than what they are, but they're in such pain.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms.
And then think about it, right? Somebody died doing the marathon. That's where it came from. Now you got thousands of people a year doing the fucking marathon.
Now you got 90
This guy bear crawled the marathon. Right? Like the average person would die doing it.
The average person can't crawl across this turf once with their shoulders screaming, you know? No, you're totally right. I think, what ends up happening is, especially in like the performance industry, people want to see, oh, I'm going to take Usain Bolt and I'm going to reverse engineer his biomechanics, and that's the optimal running form. It's like, you can't deduce that down. Like, the man is special for reasons other than his physical hardware.
Yeah.
Like all of those other factors.
It's the perfect storm of like the human being.
Exactly. And he's found the optimal strategy for his body to execute that 100 meters, right? So again, that's why I preach movement variability. Is like, let's make you adaptable to any task instead of saying, here's the task. You know what I'm saying? So I try to prepare the person for the path, not the path for the person.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's why I always joke. I talked to Mark about that on his podcast, and I was like, I just don't think you can reverse engineer greatness the way people want to. I wish it was that easy. It's just not that simple.
And
because this stuff's complicated.
Well, you're talking about the 1% of the 1%.
Right, they're outliers.
Yeah. And they're willing. But when you watch human beings do just incredible things, right? You can't really hold yourself to that standard of either being that great or not being able to achieve that.
Right.
If you want to, there are people, if you have the willpower and the strength, like, I think it's definitely a mental, physical, you know.
Well, you look at a lot of those people too. It's like they came from horrible situations.
Every one of them.
I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day, and he was talking about Francis Ngannou,
Yeah.
who was basically like mining freaking minerals in the Congo when he was a little kid. He was like a slave laborer.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so now you're going to try to reverse engineer his punching power? It's like, okay, you're going to go dig in the Congo for fucking 15 years? Probably not.
Did you see that last fight he had? With that guy, the
Tyson
Brazilian?
Fury?
No,
the Brazilian guy? I didn't watch it.
Oh
no,
my
I didn't see it. I just know he's a fucking animal. It's incredible.
That Brazilian guy's a monster too, though. I watched a whole video on him.
Right, but he also had something chasing him, right? He had the devil chasing him. I never want to go back to that abject poverty. And it's like, we don't have any real frame of reference for what that feels like. You know
I was just telling this guy, I go, when you go all in on a business, like you guys did,
right,
and you know there's no turning back, you just burn the boats, now you're going to be so much better at what you do.
100%.
And but you don't know until you go.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. For me, there was no other option. It was either succeed in this, or that was it.
How long have you been here?
We've been here in this facility for a year. The Movement Underground's existed since 2014, essentially, so about 10 years. But it's slowly evolved over time. My first business that I started in 2014 was actually called Recovery Lab, and my former partner stole it from me. He stole it out from underneath me. Well, I made mistakes. You know, I didn't get certain things in writing. It was a handshake agreement.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only idiot in the room.
Right, yeah.
Because I fucked up my first two. I opened my first gym in 2012.
Right.
And had some shitty partners that basically stole my business from me.
Yep, been there.
And then my second gym, same shit happened because I'm an idiot. I need to get fucked in the ass twice. So, so then my third gym, I was just like, all right, I'm not going to have any partners.
Right.
I'm not going to work with anybody else. I'm just going to do my own thing.
Yep. You know, sometimes that's the best way to learn the lessons is through the failure.
Yeah.
At those neck, there's like the superstructure that attaches to the first and second rib. Now what we're going to do is work on this pec minor and your subclavius. But I just want to see like what your internal. It's actually not terrible. So it's like I'm just holding this down so it doesn't like your scap doesn't just pull forward. But like this little baseline. A lot of times you open up this thoracic out. Yeah, you're going to open right up.
Like this side fatigue, when I do push-ups, I love doing push-ups. I'm a big push-up guy. But this side will fatigue all the time.
I would not be surprised if you had like a subclinical like TOS thing going on. Thoracic outlet syndrome.
Okay.
But okay, so don't Google it because it's gonna freak you out. Thoracic outlet syndrome, to be diagnosed with it, it has to be so severe that your nerve and blood supply is basically completely occluded. So they'll measure your blood flow and then put your arm in a position, and you'll get diagnosed only if the blood flow completely goes away. But a lot of people get that irritation of the brachial plexus, and they'll get some of the symptoms of it,
so
but they wouldn't be formally diagnosed.
My arm would be completely like
numb,
useless.
Yeah. But positionally dependent.
Yeah.
So like if you had to spend a lot of time over your head, be like, oh, eventually I can't even hold my arm up anymore. So like even partly, you know, just because I've been doing this a long time, just listening to you tell your story, I kind of already get an idea of what's going on with what's going on. But what I do with my clients is I still take them through that evaluation process, so they can start to understand how all these pieces fit together, because it's complicated. I'm pretty good at making it a little simpler for people, so that it's relatable. But they don't get this at the doctor. They don't get this. They don't get the education that's going to empower them to.
But you're not going to get this level of understanding where you're like, okay, that makes sense. For instance, you know, there are still people. I had a girl hit me up on Instagram yesterday, and she's like, I just want to get rid of this fat around my belly. She's like, what exercise can I do? I go, it's not that simple. There's not one exercise that you do. I was like, it's not an exercise. I go, you need to diet the right way. You know, there's a lot of components. And she's like, well, you can't just give me one exercise. I go do fucking sit-ups. You want an exercise? Go do sit-ups. I was like, or go heavy squat. You know? But you're not going to do that either. So what the fuck's the point of asking?
My thing is people go, what exercise or stretch can I do to get rid of this pain problem? I'm like, it ain't that simple.
Yeah, I know.
If it was that simple, I wouldn't even be here. You wouldn't have a job. I wouldn't have a job.
You just Google it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so what I'm doing, like this is kind of like the ART stuff, right?
Yeah.
So when ART came out, it was like, oh, we're breaking up and lengthening these tissue fibers. That was the theory, or that was the narrative that explained why people's range of motion improved. But then that was disproven. But what's really happening is there's receptors embedded in between the layers of our tissue. It's like your skin to your fascia to your muscle, right? These are layers, right? So like that's why this slides. Your skin slides in every direction, but there's an end range in every direction, right? So there's these skin ligaments that kind of anchor one layer to the next. In those layers are receptors that measure how much translation is happening. And that's how your brain knows where you are in space proprioceptively, right? So that's what I mean by sensation in, motor out. So based on the joint position and length tension relationships, your brain takes that and creates a motor plan for how it's going to execute the next steps. And all that happens instantaneously.
So it's like Golgi tendons.
Golgi tendon organs are in the tendons, right? Or in the muscle tendon unit. There's other mechanoreceptors.
But it's a
similar, exactly the same type of concept.
Yeah.
Because we used
where
to think
like it governs how far you can go.
Exactly right. We have there's dozens of different mechanoreceptors. And we're only now starting to really understand how they work. Because previously we never really had the ability to measure them or look at the brain and how that interacts with the brain. So we're at a really cool point in performance and fitness and health, and because now there's so much more information out there.
Well, I think we're learning so much faster than we did before.
Oh, 100%, man, 100%. And that's the fun part for me is like, you know, the more I learn, the more you realize how much you don't know still, you know?
I was even telling a guy today, he was doing push-ups and he was like winging his side out, and we're going through exercises, kind of stretched him out a little bit. And he's like, oh, it feels better. And I go, listen, I can't tell you what's going on inside.
Right.
Because he's like, my left side's so much weaker than my right side. I was like, yeah. I said, there's probably 1,000,001 things that could be going on. I was like, but we don't know what's going on inside. I was like, no one actually knows why certain things happen. You sleep on it wrong. Is there, are you crushing nerve endings? Like, whatever. I don't know what it is. I go, but I could get it to feel better. And I go, and I'm guessing the next 3 to 5 years, we'll start to learn and figure out like what's actually going on and how you can see it.
Absolutely. And like even some of the stuff I'm explaining to you now, in 10 years is probably going to change.
Yeah.
So it's, it's like we just have to be comfortable with this idea that what we think we know might not be the truth.
Yeah.
And like I've just always been kind of cool with that. It's like okay, it's like I'll just adapt how I treat or take that information and see what it
Well,
how
even
it
with
changes what I'm
training,
doing.
it's like there are so many people that are so dogmatic.
Oh, 100%.
This is the only thing that works. It's like, well, I don't know if that's.
Well, that strikes on Instagram. That works on Instagram.
Yeah.
Nobody likes the "it depends" answer. You know what I mean? Flip it over in your stomach. I'm gonna have you. I'm gonna hit that scap and that rhomboid. Oops. And you're just gonna let that right arm just hang down for me, Kenny. Okay.
I had this little
Not to mention, what, like 10 yards in front.
right, so it was like he threw the ball back. He threw the ball forward. He really had to get it back.
All right, so I'm gonna start addressing some of that downward rotation by just opening up like this rhomboid, levator scat, and your serratus posterior. And again, I'm using those muscles as like just like anatomical landmarks, but again, it's just like the meaty slab between your shoulder blade and your spine. Because I'm sure the comment section's gonna be like, you can't release the rhomboid. It's like, all right, dude, fuck off. Like, what do you want me to tell you?
Well, people just sit on Instagram waiting to fucking
Oh, dude, it's awesome.
people about nothing.
I just decided I was just gonna choose violence and fight right back.
Well, you know what?
And I just go right back at people in the comments like, oh man, dude, that was crazy. I'm like, it's like, fuck with the bull, get the horns. What do you want me to tell you? I know my shit, don't fuck with me.
I always like the Rogan approach where he's like, dude, I don't even read the comments. And I try not to sometimes.
Right. I know, I'm bad with that. But I'm also like trying to grow it, right? So I try to answer every comment, answer every message. And again, most of it is really positive and it's changed my life completely, so it's awesome. But there are aspects to it that are just like, God damn, man, like.
When did you start to see it grow?
So I kind of was hovering around that 10 to 15K for like 3 years or so, and that's when I was doing all my content by myself. And so I kind of started falling into that trap of like, okay, this is what I'm going to make, and I'm going to kind of pre-record. I'm going to have it scripted and do this very polished, like pre-planned video. And then when James and I kind of connected and he started doing more of the video work and we decided to work together, it was just this. It was just him being a fly on the wall, like just filming me do my thing, like with real clients authentically. And then he started choosing the clips that for me to post. So I didn't have any choice. Like he'd be like, here's 10 clips, right? And I would be like, okay, I'll post it. I'm like, it's not what I would have picked, but I'll post it. And then all of a sudden, 100K views, 1 million views. I'm like, oh, fuck, right? So he brought a different eye and a different perspective to what I was doing for my content that totally, all of a sudden it was, I posted a piece of content and then Mark Bell's DMing me, hey man, you want to come out on the podcast? I'm like, what? Are you fucking kidding me? I'm like, hell yeah. So it just started like you know, like you kind of saw, it started kind of getting the name out there a little bit more, and it's really, really cool. It's very validating and it's fun, and yeah, I'm really grateful. So we have a lot of fun with it.
Well, then you're looking forward to going to work there. It's not just
My house is 3 minutes away, so I also have like zero commute, which is the best thing ever. Oh yeah, hello darkness, my old friend. Muscle to kind of tone down. So like we were talking about like the vibrational stuff, like that's very stimulating to, so that's a great way. I call that a neurological highlighter. So when I give you a vibrational stimulus, that's kind of helping your brain map this area of your body. So imagine like some people, they operate their body on like MapQuest. They have one way to do a movement. They don't really have variable positions. They have poor hardware, software, or mind-body connection. That will make them more pain sensitive.
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
Because pain is information. At the end of the day, it instantly changes your behavior.
Well, just today when I was talking about that push-up position, right? So I had him use a set of dumbbells and lay on the bench, and I was like, all right, now rotate your hand in this way. He's like, oh, well, it feels so much better. I'm like, because he felt there was only one way to bench press or one way to do push-ups, and his hand had to be in a certain position.
Right. So that's that movement idealism, right? Where it's like there's one way to do it. Everybody has to conform to this technique or form, but we forget that form was made up. We made that shit up. It's like there wasn't like cavemen 100,000 years ago going, hey man, tuck your elbows when you push that brontosaurus off your body. I'm like, you know what I mean? It just didn't work like that. And that's kind of the thing is like we have to remember exercise now is entertainment really, and it's something we need now because we don't get enough movement in our day-to-day lives because, you know, Amazon can put your groceries in your lap for you. It's like we don't really have to do a lot of movement. And what we don't realize, in my opinion, is that we have a movement epidemic more than anything else.
Well, that's why everybody's like, oh, what?
And we wonder why depression and anxiety and obesity and all these chronic diseases are more prevalent now. It's like, yeah, well, people don't move.
From us not moving.
People don't engage their bodies like we used to, you know? So now you're gonna get the old what's for? You've done this before?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not gonna crush you with it. The tool just gives me a mechanical advantage. So I don't, you know, again, we're not breaking up tissue, that's like an old theory, but it just allows me to funnel that force into a smaller surface area.
Do you think there's any blood exchange there? Like you're pushing hard enough where you're moving blood around?
Absolutely. Well, there's, you know, all of our soft tissues are bound in fluid and water, technically.
Yeah.
And we also have hyaluronic acid embedded in our tissues that is part of why we have that viscoelasticity, right? The elastic component of our muscles is partially because they're bound in fluid, right? So the other part of this is when I shear the skin layer on the underlying layers, we get a process called blood extravasation, which is basically the capillaries start to leak a little bit of blood, right? That's why you get that redness, that warmth, right?
Yep.
So like when I look at like a chronic case of like a tendinopathy or a tendinitis, let's say, it's like, okay, here's a tissue that doesn't get good blood supply that I can mechanically desensitize using touch, but I can also create tissue shear and create that little bit of blood flow. So now I can kind of bathe that tendon in some blood flow nutrients, just what you were saying before, right? So, but again, the advantage too is I can change the muscular tone indirectly. I can change your brain's perception of this tissue. And now we're creating a whole new context for how you can move this shoulder, right? Nice.
And now what would you, like, people are always like, I have a knot. What do you think, what's your thoughts on what a knot actually is? Because people think muscle tissue just balls up.
Well, there is validity to that in a sense, like that muscular stiffness or that trigger point, right? Where the, you know, again, you kind of have to know like your muscular, like anatomy, I guess, but like the sarcomeres, or so the contractile units of a muscle fiber, they kind of bunch up and get stuck in that position. Now, again, we tend to think of that as a mechanical construct, but it's really a neurological construct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they're all stimulated by nerve.
Exactly. So deep, sustained pressure and shear, right? So again, which is the kind of you could either, you know, push down that tissue, hold it, and then move the joint so that tissue's sliding under the pressure. So that's kind of what all the Kelly Starrett stuff. So like he was calling it muscle smashing and all these things, and got a lot of hate in the aftermath because you're not breaking shit up.
Yeah.
But all of the techniques that he was showing are valid. They just don't work in the way that they were originally like described, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, think about that. I think that was like one of the highest selling, if not still one of the biggest.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And like what people want to shit on him because he's successful, which is the natural, I guess, human reaction. But I look at it and go, wow, this guy just gave millions of people a toolbox of how to potentially help themselves. It's like, what's wrong with that? You know what I mean? So I'm like, great, I just tip my cap to him. It's like, that's freaking awesome. You know, so then as the social media starts growing, he fucking DMs me. I'm like, that's sick.
Oh,
like, I have your... Yeah. You know, he started following me on Instagram, and I think the claim to fame was when The Rock was following me on Instagram for a little while. And then,
shit.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I fucking made it. He unfollowed everybody, and it was like a really tragic day. I woke my wife up in the middle of the night. I'm like, The Rock followed me on Instagram. She's like, who threw a rock at your house? Who was that? What?
Wait,
like, The Rock.
When was it?
Like, this was like earlier this year.
Really?
Yeah, it was earlier this year. I was like freaking out. I was like, this is fucking awesome. And then he unfollowed everybody, and I was like heartbroken.
I interviewed Kelly Starrett probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago at the CrossFit Games.
Right, so like that chunk, right? That's probably like a little bit of fibrosis, right? So like where there's actually like physical changes, and that's really common to see, like at this like superior medial scapular border. We call that points of convergence, right? You have your serratus posterior, your rhomboid, levator scap. You got a lot of muscles that kind of attach in here that have different like force vectors or lines of pull. So you'll start to see it like those like conjugations where we get like this like crunchy, you know, like fibrotic type of tissue. And again, it's normal. It's not a bad thing. It is what it is. Right, but watch this. Ready? Get up now. Move that shoulder now.
Oh, yeah, look at that. That's crazy. I feel like I have more range of motion than a lot of the tension I had on the back of my shoulder off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and that was just because that scap was just downwardly rotated,
Yeah.
right? So you're going to build up all this tension here, and you're just putting your cuff in a crummy position.
And then it's like when you release this, it's like I definitely do feel that like brachial plexus
Let me see your hand.
nerve.
My hand's not cold.
No.
What's that one? That one feels warm too.
Yeah.
You know, like you could even look like capillary refill.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of times, like I wouldn't say that.
But I
that's an
feel like
extreme-
I was having some grip issues too.
Yeah, that's neurological.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Yeah. No, I
inhibition.
know it's not
Yeah.
strength. Like I know
Right.
it's not the muscle. I know it's
Right.
like some sort of nerve getting crushed there. Yeah. Well, he's the real deal, ladies and gentlemen. All the way from
All
Long
right.
Island.
That's why you come out to
Okay.
Strong Island, baby.
Yeah.
Let's go. It's worth
Mike,
the trip.
I appreciate you working
You're most
on me.
welcome, man.
I appreciate you treating us like we're family here.
Absolutely.
Obviously, very Italian of you.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we do
That's
everything
what we do.
perfect.
You want some espresso? What do you want? You want a little,
We had about 3 coffees
I
already,
know.
me and this guy.
Dude, that's-
But thank you so much. I got a
pleasure.
gift. I got some gifts coming for you
Oh, that's
from
awesome, man.
Strong New York.
I appreciate
So I
it.
appreciate you.
Dude,
Treat
I
me like
appreciate that.
family. Thank you guys so
Most
much.
welcome.
Guys, the Movement Underground. If you are in Long Island, or even if you're not, check this guy out. Mike Stella on Instagram, and then the
Yep.
Movement Underground.
Movement
you guys
Underground
have
on Instagram too. Yeah, exactly
so,
right.
Dude, keep up the good work. Thank you
Appreciate
so
it, man.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah. So me and the Mute came all the way out here to Long Island to come meet Mike Stella. It's an unbelievable exchange. I'm glad to see that we share a lot of the same philosophies on training. He's an unbelievable athletic trainer. If you don't follow him already, check out Mike Stella on Instagram and the Movement Underground. If you do not live in Long Island, don't have access to somebody this good, hit him up on social media. The guy's an incredible dude. Thank you for having us, and we'll see you guys soon.